Usman versus Edwards 2 has been confirmed, Gastelum versus Imavov has been made official, and Charles Jourdain has stepped up on short notice and saved the day to take on Ilia Topuria at UFC 270, and I'm going to break down all of these stories on today's MMA news reaction video, starting with Usman versus Edwards 2 being confirmed. Finally, he has earned his title shot. That's 9 fights in a row. He's finally got his shot at the title. Dana White can sleep in peace without worrying about Leon Edwards turning up in his house in the middle of the night, and everything is restored. Leon Edwards has finally got a title shot. He's been working towards it for a very long time. There actually was a worry in my heart that maybe Leon Edwards would have to take on someone else in the meantime. I remember Dana White saying a couple of days ago or weeks ago that he had something else in plan for Leon Edwards, and I was really worried that they were going to do Chimaev versus Edwards again and really try and make sure that Leon Edwards did not get that title shot. But it seems as though Mojahed Fudilat's cartoon propaganda has made its way to Dana White and the UFC offices, and they finally agreed that Leon Edwards has earned his title shot in the welterweight division. I'm looking forward to this matchup. Really am. We'll see how it goes. Can Leon Edwards make it 10 fights in a row? From 9 fights in a row. I'm really looking forward to this one, man. This is a massive matchup in the welterweight division. I feel like the storyline of Edwards has kind of built this fight into something more. The fact that he's been held back from the title shot for a while now, through his fault or the UFC's fault or his opponent's fault for not showing up, all of the different reasons, I feel like the memes of Leon Edwards not getting his title shot have made this a bigger fight than maybe it would be in the first place. But it's a big one in the welterweight division. Another rematch for Usman. Rematch against Masvidal. If Burns beats Chimaev, I guess there's going to be a rematch there as well. He's had the rematch against Colby Covington. Now he's going to do the rematch against Leon Edwards. Of course, this was a different situation. He didn't beat Leon Edwards and then take him on immediately afterwards. He fought Leon Edwards ages ago, and now Leon Edwards has finally made his way towards him. And it looks like that's going to take place next, and I would assume this would take place in April because they didn't announce the Korean Zombie versus Alexander Volkanovski as the main event of that card. So I'm assuming they're going to do Usman versus Edwards too, and that's now in Florida, by the way, which is very interesting. So I guess they're going to do it in Florida. Usman KO'd Masvidal, of course. I'm sure he'll win over some of those Florida fans, maybe, and that's why they'll do that as the headliner. But I'm looking forward to Leon Edwards' fight. It's a big one. And also Aaron Bronstetter officialized this as well. I should mention why I have this information. Aaron Bronstetter claimed that Dana White confirmed to him that that's what's going to be happening next. Usman versus Edwards 2. Do it in April. And that'll mean that Chimaev versus Burns might be on the same card. And that would mean that that card would be, if I'm not mistaken, I'll try and pull up the card right now. That might be one of the better cards this year. Usman versus Edwards 2 as the main event. Volkanovski versus Korean Zombie as the co-main event. Yan versus Sterling 2 as the feature fight. Chimaev versus Burns to open up the main card, which would be a massive fight as well, and it would also be interesting to maybe see some backstage altercations between Usman and Chimaev, or like even some of the other guys like Chimaev and Leon Edwards could get into it backstage. We'll see what happens on the embedded episodes. But on the April card, I believe there's one other main event fight that's been announced so far, and it might be Irene Aldana. I'm going to double check that right now though, just to make sure. Yes, it is Irene Aldana versus Aspen Ladd. I mean, you can't have it all your way, I guess. But that'll be on the main card as well. Fuck, that really hogs up some very valuable position on the card that could be used to sell pay-per-view buys. But either way, I'm looking forward to this matchup. And I feel like Leon Edwards has got a solid chance of beating Usman. I think he really does. And that's what I'm going to really discuss here. I reckon Usman's going to win. But man, Leon Edwards is good. And after watching Usman versus Covington too, I know Covington's really good, but I think if he can just stuff the takedowns, he's going to have a real good chance of beating Usman, because although Usman's stand-up has massively improved, I watched Colby Covington outstrike him in those last 3 rounds effectively and land the bigger shots in those last 3 rounds and eventually start to figure out Usman's game a little bit on the feet and start landing those uppercuts. And Leon Edwards has the level of striking necessary to also figure out those same things. Land the uppercuts, land the hooks where there's openings. I mean, Leon Edwards never really blows your mind with a performance. I mean, he looks good in certain moments in fights, but oftentimes he just barely does more than his opponent. And this seems to scale depending on No, nothing. Like, regardless of who the opponent is, Leon Edwards will be slightly better than them and make sure to be slightly better than them. Outside of that one moment at the end of the Nate Diaz fight, he dominated Nate Diaz, clearly won that fight. I know a lot of people show images of Nate Diaz landing that one shot at the end. I think the UFC even posted something where it was one of the coolest pictures this year, and it's Nate Diaz pointing at a rock to Leon Edwards. Like, Diaz got his ass handed to him for 4 rounds and 4 minutes of that fight. He landed one punch at the end, and even BT Sport afterwards, when he uploaded the fight, they said, what an amazing 5-round war. It wasn't a 5-round war, but it's like the Volkanovski-Ortega situation. One moment means that it was an extremely competitive war and fight, but Leon Edwards schooled Nate Diaz on the feet for the majority of that fight. And he's got better stand-up than Colby Covington. And I'd bet good money on that. Now, can he defend the takedowns? Well, first of all, Edwards didn't do badly against Usman in the first place, really, when it came to defending the takedowns. Now, he did get taken down and out-controlled, but it's not like he got just completely dominated on the ground and the shit beaten out of him and he had no chance whatsoever. Leon Edwards has got good takedown defense. I just worry if Usman's just going to use the Masvidal 1 game plan and just hold him against a cage and foot stomp him, but Leon Edwards has been held against a cage by guys like Donald Cerrone before, but he seems very safe when he's there, knows how to get himself out of danger, and he's got really good clinch work now that he's improved since that Cerrone fight that he even used in that Cerrone fight as well. So I think Edwards has got a really good chance, but I can so clearly see in my brain right now, and I don't know if you guys could see this as well, I can see Edwards doing really, really good. Stuffing the takedowns early, landing a bunch of really good shots, Usman swinging all over the place and missing completely, and having a really bad performance, not getting too much control time with the takedowns, landing a couple of foot stomps here and there, landing some good knees in the clinch against a cage maybe, and I could just see Edwards getting clipped out of nowhere by Usman as the rounds go on. Like, I can see Edwards being up 2 rounds after a close first, and he's starting to land some really good leg kicks and catch Usman on the counters and wobble Usman here and there, but he just doesn't follow up. He stays patient, he stays composed, and then Usman just lands a massive right hand after faking for a takedown that Edwards sort of defends and then gets knocked out cold in round 3 or something like that. So what I would predict to happen is Leon Edwards is winning and then gets KO'd out of nowhere. That'd be likely, but I'm so glad that Leon Edwards has earned his title shot, finally. 9 fights in a row. He's finally here, fighting for the belt. It worked out for Leon Edwards, and I'm glad, because there was a moment in my channel here where I was saying that Leon Edwards has messed up everything. He's probably going to get passed over, but because they waited so long to book Chimaev versus Burns, I'm telling you, if Chimaev versus Burns would have formed in December or even January, they probably wouldn't have given this to Leon Edwards. They would have waited to see what would happen between Burns and Chimaev, and if Chimaev won, they might have just given it to Chimaev over Leon Edwards. But because it took so long to make a Chimaev fight against a top contender, it's all worked out for Leon Edwards. He had the last laugh, and I think he's going to get this one done. Of course, he was going to take on Jorge Masvidal, but Masvidal had to pull out of that one, so he was more than willing to show up and really earn his title shot. So the UFC, I guess, couldn't be too mad at him for, like, blaming him for the reason why he hasn't earned it yet. They kept giving him fights. He did accept the fights. He accepted the Chimaev fight. Chimaev pulled out of that one. Remember, that could have happened last year, which is crazy to think about. It's been a very quick year this year, let's just say. I think that was supposed to happen in January of last year, which is a whole year ago now. I'm aging rapidly. But again, Leon Edwards did very good the first time. Not the best. I mean, Usman's definitely improved since then as well, but it wasn't a domination, and Edwards showed some kind of capability. And it wasn't a complete shutout until that 3rd round, because in the first 2 rounds, Edwards kind of kept up, got taken down here and there, stuffed a couple of them in those early rounds, of course stuffing 6 out of 13 takedowns, as I have the stats in front of me now, and then eventually Edwards started to gas out and Usman started to put the pace on him and take him down in those later rounds. But I will say this, Usman doesn't seem to be able to dominate with his takedowns as much anymore. Even in the first Masvidal fight, in the second Masvidal fight, it's not the same Usman that we saw rise through the divisional rankings and dominate people on the ground and butcher them and smash them up on the ground, and they'd be at risk of being TKO'd to ground and pound and stuff like that. And I think that maybe there's a worry, in my mind, even with an Usman pick, that maybe he's kind of fallen in love with his striking, and maybe moving over to Trevor Whitman's gym is not the best for his grappling per se, compared to training with guys like Gilbert Burns and Vicente Luque over at Sanford MMA. Now, of course, his grappling could get better just by training with Justin Gaethje, who's got really good takedown defense, but at the same time, I don't know. We haven't really seen Usman effectively use his grappling to succeed recently. He's shown good takedown defense, but can he keep that pace anymore? Taking down Leon Edwards round after round and controlling him when he's the older guy, because Usman is not a young guy anymore. He is not a young guy at all anymore. I believe he's coming up to how old? I believe he's 34 or will be 34 by the time this fight happens. He's already 34. He's going to be a month away from being 35 if this fight happens in April by the time the fight happens. Edwards is a young guy, around 30, coming into his prime, doesn't have the same injuries as Usman. This is a really competitive fight and I'm looking forward to it. And people sleep on Edwards quite a bit, but he's very good outside of that one moment where Nate Diaz landed a big punch. But I just think Usman could hold him down like a Gunnar Nelson could, push him against a cage like a Donald Cerrone could, and even maybe land some big shots on the feet. So I'd call a third round KO for Usman, but I'm glad Edwards is getting his shot. Moving on to another news story, which is Kelvin Gastelum versus Nassourdine Imavov, added to UFC 273 on April as well. I mean, I guess this is going on the prelims because that April card is going to be overstacked completely. So I'd like this to headline the prelims with Mackenzie Dern versus Tisha Torres, which has also been announced, by the way, on the co-main event of the prelims. That would be ideal. But Kelvin Gastelum gonna Kelvin Gastelum. Hey, Kelvin, you're losing all the time. Let's take on a nice little fucking gimme fight and get you back in there on a win. No, I'll take on Nassourdine Imavov. I know this isn't on short notice, so it's not the regular Kelvin Gastelum way, but who's managing Kelvin Gastelum? I think he could win this one, though. I will say that because, again, Phil Hawes beat Nassourdine Imavov, and I know Nassourdine Imavov beat Edmen Shahbazyan, took him down, made him gas out, he couldn't defend the takedowns anymore, used a blueprint that's been used before on Edmen Shahbazyan to beat Edmen Shahbazyan, had a very good performance though and finished him, finished Ian Heinisch by gassing him out, walking him down, landing big shots. I don't see him finishing Kelvin Gastelum in any way. So this is going to be a decision win for Imavov, in my opinion, especially in a free rounder where he doesn't have much time to find that finish if he wants to beat Kelvin Gastelum. I don't see him dominating Kelvin Gastelum on the ground. I could see Gastelum catching Imavov, finishing him on the feet, more likely than I can see Imavov finishing Gastelum on the feet. And Gastelum's got really good takedown defense. He's really good, but what mindset is he in right now in his career? But I will say, I wanted him to move down to welterweight. I thought the welterweight move would have been a great one. Right down there, maybe rematch Neil Magny. It was a close fight the first time. See if you can beat him again, or beat him in general. And then we'll see what goes down. But Kelvin Gastelum, what happened to 170? I think Kelvin would have an actual chance against the top 170 pounders right now. But he just can't give up the fucking burritos, it seems. And here we are at 185 against Nassourdine Imavov. Nassourdine Imavov is not the biggest of middleweights. He used to be a welterweight, but then again, he is, of course, of Dagestani or Caucasus origin. Even if he was born and raised in France, he still has that inner weight bully genetic within him. So he's still a big middleweight, but Kelvin Gastelum isn't going to be too outsized. I don't see him being out-grappled. I don't see him being out-cardioed. I don't see him getting finished. This is going to be a slugfest. If Gastelum's the underdog, I might side with him here. This is the kind of underdog I like. I'm going to go with Kelvin Gastelum, maybe. I just worry about where his mindset is. And Nassourdine Imavov's so fucking good, but I don't know, man. There's a few fights in Imavov's career where he hasn't looked too impressive, but he's looked more impressive against the top opponents. So maybe he's been taking on monsters down at the lower parts of the rankings, and now he's getting to the upper guys that have been damaged a little bit here and there, and the blueprints have been written on how to beat them already, rather than some undefeated up-and-comer. So he has a better chance at beating them, I don't know. But I will side with Kelvin Gastelum here, and I'm glad they've made this fight in a way, because if Gastelum's going to be a part of this sport, I don't want him fighting some unranked guy, really. I wouldn't mind a move down to 170, but Gastelum's a big name at middleweight. I thought maybe he'd look for a Weidman or something like that, or even an Edmen Shahbazyan, but he wants the top contender. And I think this is a sign of how Gastelum's viewing his career right now. He wants the toughest guy. He wants to be really switched on. He wants to have a real problem in front of him that he has to train really hard for. And here it is, 10 versus number 12. If he wins this one, he'll move above Uriah Hall. He arguably should move above Darren Till as well, so he can stand to climb up the rankings here. And obviously, Kelvin Gastelum's a big name, so You could do a him versus... No, I don't want to see a him versus Till rematch, to be fair. If he wins this one, you could do him versus Paulo Costa in the middleweight division. That would be something. I know Paulo Costa is right now arguing and pleading with the UFC to stay down in the middleweight division. So if Gastelum wins this one in a big pay-per-view card and wants to take on Paulo Costa, that's a potential matchup. Maybe he could fight the loser of some of these big fights coming up in the division, like if Vettori loses down the line, or maybe he just takes on Brad Tavares in the meantime, or maybe he welcomes up Stephen Wonderboy Thompson to the middleweight division after this one if he wins. Good fight for both. If Imavov wins, you're looking straight into the top 5. And then you're looking to get him way up there in the rankings. Maybe take on Hermansson Strickland winner or something like that, just to keep them busy in the meantime and add another win to their resume. Or if he beats them, he can take their spot and move up the rankings as well. Imavov's very dangerous, but I don't mind Gastelum's chances. Moving on to another story, which is... Evloev is out of the Ilia Topuria fight that happened a couple of days ago. And now Charles Jourdain is stepping up on short notice to take on Ilia Topuria. I think he's going to lose... But I respect Charles Jourdain for doing this. We needed a good position. We needed a good fight on this card. It's a good position on the card as well, so I understand why he took the fight, and we'll get to that in a second. But that UFC 270 card is fucking garbage. So we need all the fucking help we can get for that card, because there is... Other than the main and co-main event, there is seriously nothing of substance on that card, and that's not an over-exaggeration. I know there's early prelims, and the main card of a pay-per-view here, but seriously, there's not much else of substance on that card, and all of the fights are falling out anyway, so we don't know how much more we're going to lose on that card. But I'm looking forward to this. It's a big matchup. I know it's just got Mikel Pereira added to that card as well, which could help out the main card a bit just by Mikel Pereira being there, and they could promote him by posting some of his backflips on Instagram and stuff like that, other than the one against Nico Price because he fouled him. I don't know why they keep posting that. But either way, Charles Jourdain, Ilia Topuria. I get it for Charles Jourdain. He just won a big fight. He's got a lot of momentum right now. He wants to take on a tough test. If he wins this one, he's right into the rankings of the featherweight division. I'm sure they're going to do him a favour and pay him a nice amount of money here. I think he was rescheduling his contract because after his last fight, he was talking about how he loves being in the UFC and he wants to stay in the UFC when he comes back. So I feel like he had just renewed his contract. And if this is the first fight on your new contract, you're probably going to get a nice little bump up of pay if you're jumping up against a ranked opponent and saving a pay-per-view main card with an amazing fight on the main card. And I'm glad. Good for Charles Jourdain. He's in a great spot on a pay-per-view card. Ilia Topuria is probably going to beat him in my opinion. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he just goes out there and completely outgrapples Charles Jourdain and maybe Darce chokes him. Topuria's got some really nasty Darce chokes. I believe we saw Jourdain get Darce choked in his last loss against Julian Erosa. Ilia Topuria, Julian Erosa. Like, I just think there's levels to the game in the featherweight division right now, and obviously Charles Jourdain on short notice after Christmas and New Year's when he wasn't expecting to fight, so I don't expect him in peak condition, but I respect that he stepped up in the first place, and even if he loses, he's still going to be a favourite name, and he's young, so now's the time to take these kind of fights. When you're 30, 31, 32, and you haven't got many years left in your career, and now's the time to make a run towards that title, you can't afford losses. Charles Jourdain is young enough to where he can afford some losses. How old is he right now? I want to say he's like 27. He's 26. Oh, fucking yes. Just get in there. Improve your contract. Get in there. Get more fights. Get paid while you can. And have these losses. Because if you lose, what are you going to do? Oh, you versus someone else. Like, he's already quite high up outside the rankings at featherweight. So he'll automatically get a big name. Like, hey, it's time for you to take on Caceres coming off a loss just outside the rankings. Or something like that. Doing this means he'll be on better spots on cards in the future. Because he saved the day and fans respect it. It's the Dan Hooker situation. And I'm looking forward to him as well. I just think Topuria's better. We saw that, what's his name, gave Charles Jourdain some problems. Marcelo Rojo gave him some problems in those early rounds, especially with body shots as well. Landed quite a few of them in the early rounds of the Jourdain fight, and he took that fight on short notice. Topuria's got some nasty body shots. He's got a solid chin. He's got big power. I can see him just out-hustling Jourdain and also taking him down, because you've got to think he's been training for Movsar Evloev, the wet blanket in the featherweight division, for the past however many weeks. So he's been doing a lot of grappling in camp. I wouldn't be surprised if he's he's thinking, I've got a purist striker coming in on short notice who's been out-grappled before in his career. I'll just go out there and grapple this time because that's what I've been doing for the past 6 weeks, and I'll just go straight through him and submit him immediately. I can see a submission from Ilia Topuria at the end of the first round, but I'm looking forward to the fight, and I hope that Charles Jourdain gets the upset just for banterous reasons. Good stuff, though. That makes the card a little bit more acceptable, but it's still not acceptable. The UFC 270 card is still unacceptable. I'm not letting it off the hook that easily. But Usman versus Edwards 2 is made. That's good news. I'm glad Edwards got his title shot. Gastelum versus Imavov has also been made. That's good, I guess. Tough matchup for Gastelum, but still a big fight added to that card that can go on the prelims. And Jourdain is a savage stepping in on short notice, and I appreciate him. Other than that, Kevin Holland, I haven't spoken about this yet, but Kevin Holland's taking on Alex Oliveira. I guess I can make a little bit of a comment here about this. Yeah, tough matchup. Not really, though. I think he's going to win. If he loses, big fucking problems for Kevin Holland's career. Let's be real. He's probably going to get cut if he loses, I'll be honest, because that'll be 2 in a row, 1 no contest and another loss. Not looking good for Kevin Holland. Plus, they're not going to want to pay him as much as they're paying him, which I believe is like 100 for 100 or something like that. He earns quite a bit of money, maybe 50 for 50, 70 for 70. Some decent chunk of money is what they're paying Kevin Holland right now, and they don't want to be paying him that to beat like CM Punk in the welterweight division. If they're going to be paying him a bit of money because he's a big name, they want him against dangerous opponents. They've given him a bit of a layup here in Oliveira, who I believe has just taken too much damage to be successful. I would argue. He always gets injured in fights. He always gets rocked nowadays. I think Oliveira's just had too many wars, and he's sort of falling down that cowboy-esque career pathway where you just can't take the damage anymore and can't recover from it anymore. In that Yancy Medeiros fight, I feel like he used up all of his tough guy points, and I think that Kevin Holland's going to beat him by KO. Or maybe submission. Maybe he rocks him and then puts him in a rear naked, similar to Randy Brown. We'll see how the fight goes, but I hope Kevin Holland wins. That's all of it. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Click that button up there. Toodle pip. I'll see you later. Goodbye.